My future husband and I do not have a ton of money, so when we originally decided to get married, we thought we would have a small courthouse wedding and then go to our favorite pizza joint, Dive Bar, afterwards. This would have been totally fine with us, and we would have paid for everything ourselves, and we would have been happy. For reasons that aren't necessary to explain with this story, we are still going to do that for wedding number 1. Now, this is where it gets complicated. I come from a very upper middle class home. While I don't have money, my parents do. And because they have money, they offered to pay for the traditional big wedding. I initially had some misgivings about taking them up on this offer, but I decided to accept because I could see it was important to them, and it's really hard to say no to your dream wedding. From there, it has been a complete disaster. It started when they wouldn't give me a budget to work within, and I could tell that they didn't understand initially how much an average wedding in our area costs. I work in events and plan them regularly, meaning I always knew that the wedding in their head was over a $30,000 wedding. Which is why I knew I couldn't pay for something like that. Which is why I wanted to go to a pizza place. Explaining that to them was a nightmare because when they got married in the early 80s, they were able to do it for under $10,000. Eventually, they understood after hours of arguments. I have to say here, the arguments were not me demanding my parents pay for such extravagance. The arguments were me trying to cancel this second wedding, and my parents getting angry over the fact that I couldn't plan an opulent wedding on a $10,000 budget. That's how they got rich, though. They were really cheap, and I admire that in them. I try to be the same way, which is why I just wanted a pizza parlor wedding. Like I said, though, eventually they understood, and we moved on. We booked a beautiful wedding venue for my perfect date. We booked a band. We booked a photographer. I bought a dress. We had almost everything planned, and it was perfect. Then, situation number 2 happened. My parents are American, and my future husband's parents are Irish. In Ireland, the parents do not pay for anything. Understanding that, we were not planning on asking my future husband's parents to pay for the traditional rehearsal dinner or anything else. However, that was not okay with my parents. To be fair, my parents did understand that they had more money and said that even if they could just buy some cases of beer and a couple bags of potato chips, it would be fine. They just wanted the gesture. My future husband's parents thought it was ridiculous, and my parents got angry with them. However, neither side was talking to each other. It was my parents yelling at me and my future husband's parents being passive-aggressive with him. Eventually, his parents gave in and said they'd host something small and everyone was kind of happy. Except me, because once again, other people's emotional crap was threatening to ruin my wedding, and that never would have happened if we just didn't have one. Then, last night happened. The wedding venue has a small separate hotel on the premises. The hotel books on a first-come, first-served basis, and at the time of the booking, had not opened their books for the time frame of the wedding date. The wedding date is on a holiday. When they did open their books, they called the first person on the wait list, and that person booked the best room in the hotel. Next, they called my mother, who I thought could handle the simple task of booking a hotel room. So I delegated that responsibility to her. However, when they informed her that the best room was taken, she got upset and the receptionist hung up on her. I know my mother. She definitely escalated the situation, and the receptionist maybe shouldn't have hung up on her, but I would have if a stranger started yelling at me when I was just trying to do my job. Then the manager calls back, and my dad gets on the phone. I also know my dad, and I know that my dad also definitely flipped out, and both sides agree that he threatened to sue the hotel several times. The manager then told my dad that he was no longer welcome on the premises, and was going to recommend that the wedding planner cancel the entire wedding. After that call, my mom calls me and says she's really sorry and sort of explains the conversation. I frantically call the venue, the hotel, everyone, trying to get someone there on the phone. Finally, that manager calls me back and explains to me her side of the story, which I think is probably the more accurate one. I apologize to her, and she's kind enough to say that her issue is with my dad and not with me. She also says that she's meeting with the owner today or tomorrow to talk this through. But she doesn't think the hotel will want the liability of allowing someone who has threatened to sue them stay on the premises. I say I understand and appreciate her position. I say I just don't want my wedding ruined over this one instance, and if she can just give me any advice on what I could do to fix this, it would be greatly appreciated. She says she will see if the owner thinks that there's a way to move forward, and if there is a chance, she will work with me. I then ask her to please only speak with me going forward, and she says she agrees, and we hang up. I then call my mom, and I tell her that I take the manager's side. If I was on the phone and a strange man called me up, started yelling at me and threatened me, I would want nothing to do with him either. Then my parents get mad at me, saying that I'm not being loyal, etc. I don't care about being loyal to them when they are being so belligerent. The excuse I keep getting is that my dad just got off of a whirlwind 3-day trip to Europe for business, and he is tired. I say I don't care about his excuse, and neither does the hotel. They don't know him. They don't know me. They just know that he was aggressive with him. After that, I just refused to speak to them further, and it's been about 14 hours since I last talked to them. I want to cancel the whole thing. I want to just marry my future husband in a pizza place, and honestly, I don't even want to invite my parents to it. They want to replan the whole thing at a different place. My friends say I should let them do that, but tell them I will have nothing to do with anything and just show up on the day in my dress. But I don't think that they are capable of letting me do that. I am just so mad at them, and I don't know if my anger will fade and then I'll regret not getting my dream wedding, or if going along with them will ruin the joy I currently have of getting to spend the rest of my life with the man I love. At the end of the day, I just want a happy marriage, and I don't know which path will lead to that. Please help. So, I know it's not useful in this situation to say this, but for future reference, for God's sake, you know how your parents are. Don't get into this kind of mess with them to begin with. You shouldn't have argued with them initially about getting them to understand the budget. That was the first obvious sign that this was going to go really badly, and you should have heeded it and stopped it all there. Hopefully, you can learn from this going forward in setting boundaries. My, female, father died when I was a young teenager and left my mom and I in a lot of debt. As such, we became very close and a team. She worked 2 jobs and I had pretty much a full-time job outside of school, which obviously impacted on my studies. As a result of the debt situation, I gave all of my money to my mother and wasn't able to take opportunities in my education, in my social life, or in general. Unlike my peers, I could not travel or pursue anything because my mother needed my financial assistance. This continued until a couple of years ago when I got married. My mother was at that point financially stable, thanks to my support, and so was able to live a life again. At my wedding, I thanked her for being a wonderful mother, gave her a special gift, and made sure I had plenty of photos with her and her partner. A year before I got married, she had met a lovely man with 3 children. He really is lovely, and a month ago they got married. I helped plan the wedding. At the wedding itself, I was eager to celebrate my mother's new, happy life, and I was delighted for her. However, I felt like the odd one out. I was included in one everybody photo, and then they did the groom side of the photos, so waited to the side for the bride side. It's just me on the bride side, whilst they had pictures with the groom's children and grandchildren. But once they were finished, the photographer left without taking any pictures of me with the happy couple. I was surprised and very hurt that I was not included as an immediate family member. This was repeated throughout the day. I was not mentioned in the speeches. I was not included in the receiving line. I was a witness. I wasn't on the top table, whilst the groom's children were. I want to make it clear that I am very happy for her, but I am finding it incredibly hard to get over this. I am an only child, and was there for my mother when no one else was, but on the most important day, I was completely forgotten, and I find that it hurts me a lot that I cannot stop thinking about it and crying. I don't want to ruin her happiness, but how do I let it go? This is awful. You helped plan the wedding. Did your mom explain any of this at all? I can understand the pictures may have been an oversight. Not seating you at the main table and not thanking you, I honestly can't figure out why, since all of that is usually pre-planned. There must have been some kind of a behind-the-scenes reason. Maybe new stepfamily isn't as wonderful as they look, and stepfather isn't as welcoming as you think. Maybe your mother is eager to put her past behind her and move on with her new family, and unfortunately, that may not mean you. You're going to have to talk to her and bring this up. Be aware you might not like what you hear, and it might irrevocably change your relationship with your mother. Edit. Thinking about this more, your mom has really taken advantage of you financially. Those weren't your debts, and her focus should have been on getting you started in life, not holding you back and guilting you into paying her your paycheck while your school suffered. I grew up in a very poor town, and I've known tons of very low-income families that struggle, but don't require this of their kids, including single moms with debt. If in the US, she had options like bankruptcy, and was probably getting Social Security for you too, since your dad died. You may be rationalizing your sacrifices for her internally, but she hasn't done right by you as a mother. My grandmother passed away and left her house and all her assets to my uncle, one of 5 children. He had lived with her for 50 years, including cooking and cleaning and contributing to the house financially with his disability checks. 3 out of 4 of the remaining children, my aunts and uncles, freaked the hell out, tried to take him to court, failed, and since have made his life a misery by harassing him and insulting him, saying they were entitled to an equal share of the house, and if he was a decent human being, he would sell the house and split it. This actually made him quite ill, and they backed off, freaking out about him dying and who was left in his will. Finally, they were so generous and said they would leave him alone if he made a will saying it would be left to all of them equally, hoping for him to die soon, I guess. Well, he refused to say who he was going to leave his stuff to in his will. He said it was none of their business. Now, those 3 aunts and uncles, as well as their children, 5 children, his nieces and nephews, have declared he is no longer family because he stole their inheritance and clearly didn't care about them. My mother and I are still visiting him, but otherwise, he is an isolated, disabled guy in his 60s who has now been dropped by his entire family. No Christmas, no birthdays, no invitation to family events. He's had to deal with being disabled his entire life and caring for his mother. Now she's dead, and the majority of his family have turned their backs on him over money. It is not even a massive sum of money. The house is worth £200,000, and there was £50,000 in savings. So a decent amount, but it's not like he has millions and is hoarding it. He has the house he has lived in for 50 years and contributed to the upkeep and mortgage of for 50 years, plus a bit of savings that will probably need to be spent on the house over the years as it needs some work done, and his disability checks. I am disgusted by my family's actions. His brother and sisters have abandoned him over money, and all their kids are just going along with it. I want to cut them out of my life for good. They have insulted him, harassed him, tried to take him to court. They've made him sicker and demonstrated they never cared about him or his health. I don't want myself or my daughter, 6 months, to have anything to do with them anymore, and my husband agrees. However, my mom is begging me to still go to family events with her. We do big family celebrations, barbecues, Christmas, birthdays, restaurant meals out. She wants me to go along, without my uncle, as he is now banned from all family events, and just smile and pretend it's okay, because she says she doesn't want me to end up like him, shunned. Well, I'm okay with that, 100%. They have never done anything for me, and if they are willing to shrug off family members over feeling entitled to an inheritance, none of them even care that if the house had been split, he would be homeless and disabled since he wouldn't have the cash to buy a new place. None of them will acknowledge that he deserves the house, considering he actually financially contributed to it for 50 years, whereas they didn't spend a penny on it. My mom loves all of her brothers and sisters, even though they are doing this, and is begging me not to rock the boat, as it would come back on her, and she can't imagine a life without all these family gatherings. She agrees that he deserves the house, and she did not take part in the court attempt to question the inheritance, and she is still going to visit him privately. But she won't stand against the rest of the family either. What should I do in your opinion? Go and let my daughter be brought up around people who would do this? Or stand my ground and say if they aren't willing to treat him fairly, then they are not going to be part of my life either? Either way, I will still be visiting my shunned uncle every week, and my daughter will get to know him. There is no way I am partaking in this pathetic Coventry just to try and make him so emotionally vulnerable he will give them the house I feel he is perfectly entitled to. If I keep seeing the family as normal, I feel like I am condoning or taking part in his exclusion. If I refuse and say exclude me too if you can't be decent human beings, it will very much upset my mom and may even have consequences for her, as my family can be very petty and vindictive and don't like people disagreeing with them. I am actually with you 100% on this. If they have all cut him off, he may plan to leave any money to you and or your mother, which would make you and or her their next targets. I hope your uncle lives long enough to spend every single penny he has, and that you don't have to deal with the crap he's dealing with. But even if he doesn't, cutting them off now for being jerks seems like a good way to deal with their current behavior, as well as any possible future behavior. I think you should straight up tell your family why they are wrong. Grandma left the money to Uncle because she felt that was the right place to go, because he deserved it by being there for her. He earned it by upkeeping the house, and he needed it the most to live out his life. He did not steal it. They are trying to steal it from him. They are being selfish and horrible and hurting a man who should be their family who needs them. They need to stop their destructive and money-hungry attitudes and apologize sincerely to their brother, Uncle. Otherwise, you will not accept them as people you want in your life anymore. From now on, spend those holidays with your uncle when you can. Christmas with him, holidays, whatever. If they want to be terrible people, that's up to them. Just make it clear. You can do this in person if you feel brave enough to stand up in front of them and say it. Or if that's too much pressure and you are afraid you'd be intimidated, which is totally fine. you can just send out a mass text or Facebook message or something. They might be offended and insulted and not take it well, and if so, oh well. I wouldn't just ghost them. I would make sure they know they are being terrible people in your eyes.